In June 2025, former U.S. President Donald Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act and imposed a 50% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports from Canada, which sent shockwaves through the North American economy. This decision, a rarely used legal provision originally designed to protect national security, was now used against Canada, America's largest supplier of steel and aluminum and its closest ally. For Canadian industry leaders, it was more of a betrayal than a shock. For global markets, it was a hand grenade. The impact in the U.S. was felt immediately. In the automotive sector, a 6% to 9% increase in raw material costs squeezed profit margins, especially on high-volume products such as steel-intensive pickup trucks. Production lines slowed down, some plants curtailed production, while others canceled shifts altogether. This was felt most acutely in Michigan. The state's unemployment rate jumped from a flat 4% in February 2024 to 5.4% in February 2025, the largest annual increase nationally. Economists have warned that if this trend continues, it could trigger a wave of recessions across the Midwest, especially in cities dependent on automotive manufacturing. So how did Canada respond? Instead of the expected harsh retaliatory tariffs, condemnations, or press conferences, Ottawa used a quiet and much more calculated lever: diverting flows. Instead of an open trade war, Canada diverted its steel inward. There was no formal embargo or export ban. Instead, the federal government rewrote procurement guidelines, tightened national security protocols for energy infrastructure, and implemented stricter environmental sourcing rules. While these rules did not technically stop exports to the U.S., they restructured the entire incentive system, making it functionally impossible for most steel to cross the border. It was legal, quiet, and devastatingly effective. Trump's 50% tariff was designed as a show of force, but it turned out to be a self-inflicted trap for the United States. It has isolated American producers, enraged local governments, and backed Congress into a corner. Instead of a diplomatic victory or economic gain, they faced mounting losses and an eroding relationship with the ally that once sustained American industry. All these factory slowdowns, job losses, and canceled pipeline orders could be attributed to a single miscalculation. Trump built a wall and forgot that Canada had already built a way out. Canada has been preparing for this moment for a long time. Long before the tariff war escalated, Canadian policymakers had quietly begun to build a new industrial doctrine. It was based on self-sufficiency, clean energy, and national resilience, not confrontation. While the U.S. saw it as a challenge, it was in fact a declaration of independence. In early 2025, before the tariff war escalated further, Ottawa launched the $1 billion Canadian Steel Modernization Fund. This was not a rescue operation, but a roadmap. The fund prioritized low-emission production methods, steel capacity for national defense, and supply chain security for the energy transition. It was not just about keeping the furnaces running. It was about ensuring that Canada would never again depend on foreign markets to feed its critical industries. The strategy has deepened even further. To control its inputs, Canada imposed strict quotas on steel imports from all countries except the United States, reducing permitted volumes to just 50% of the previous year's levels. Any amount above that would face a punitive 50% tariff. This was not a traditional protectionist move. It was about managing the market like a supply chain, not a commodity auction. At the heart of Canada's strategy is a bold climate commitment. By 2035, all major steel mills will switch to electric arc furnaces. Unlike traditional blast furnaces, electric arc furnaces use electricity to melt scrap or pre-processed iron, significantly reducing emissions and energy use. But electric arc furnaces are not the whole story. They are being combined with direct reduced iron technology fueled by hydrogen and natural gas instead of coal. One unique advantage of Canada is its electricity grid. Most of the country's electricity comes from hydroelectric power plants, which means that the electricity used in steel production is also clean. The U.S. steel industry should consider that Canada can offer cleaner, cheaper, tariff-free steel to Europe and Asia. Why should the world continue to buy from carbon-intensive U.S. producers? Because this is no longer just an environmental issue, but a geopolitical race for the materials of the next industrial age. And Canada has decided not to wait for Washington to catch up. While U.S. builders were forced to halt projects and revise budgets, Canada took steps to protect itself. Instead of seeking new imports, it turned inward and reinvented the steel cycle from the ground up. In mid-2025, when the flow of steel to the U.S. dried up and market volatility intensified, the Canadian Construction Association issued its own warning: if domestic supply did not catch up, there could be problems. In most countries, this would have caused panic, but in Ottawa, it triggered policy certainty. The goal was not just economic, it was environmental, strategic, and geopolitical. Recycled steel emits far less carbon than virgin steel, especially when processed in electric arc furnaces powered by renewable energy, which Canadian provinces can already offer. As international buyers, from electric vehicle manufacturers in Europe to infrastructure funds in Asia, began to demand low-carbon materials, Canadian firms realized they had something the U.S. could not easily copy: clean steel with a closed-loop supply chain. As the U.S. tries to salvage its trade ties and contain domestic backlash, Canada has acted with quiet precision, redefining not only who it sells to, but also why. Gone are the days when steel exports were measured by tonnage alone. Canada's new model is not about being everywhere. It aims to be indispensable for the industries of the future. At the heart of this strategy is the landmark Carbon Passport Agreement with the European Union. Unlike simple labeling, this certification verifies that steel is produced under strict low-carbon conditions. In return, it earns the right to cross EU borders without facing punitive carbon tariffs under Brussels' climate regime. It's a ticket to the world's most demanding markets, and Canada has it. But this is where change becomes geopolitical. Ottawa has made it clear that steel is no longer just a product, but a tool of climate-compatible diplomacy. Exports are now selectively directed to industries that match Canada's long-term environmental priorities: electric vehicle production, nuclear power, infrastructure, and clean public transportation systems. If a recipient cannot demonstrate real decarbonization targets, it falls to the bottom of the queue. In some cases, it is even excluded altogether. Ottawa built a staircase, Trump built a wall, and in that choice, the balance of North American trade has changed, perhaps permanently. What started as a tariff dispute triggered a deeper unraveling, the quiet dismantling of the long-standing economic interdependence between the U.S. and Canada. Washington sought leverage by force. Ottawa chose leverage by design. While the U.S. doubled down on old energy and fossil-fueled generation, Canada turned to hydropower-backed steel, climate-smart trade deals, and supply chain autonomy. When Europe raised its carbon wall, Canada was already at the door, passport in hand, offering hydropower-supported clean steel from Quebec and Ontario. And here is the part that should worry Washington the most. Canada no longer really needs to leave the U.S. market to exit it. It only needs to open a bridge to Brussels, and a silent strategic divergence will have begun. No threats, no noise, just gravity doing its work. So now the question is simple. What if this is not a trade war, but a realignment of priorities, not policies? Who will shape the industries of the future, and who will continue to defend the past? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your participation makes this community stronger. See you in our next video.